After I refused to give my inheritance to my mom, she arranged a family meeting. When I showed up, there were lawyers waiting to pressure me into signing it away. As they pushed the papers toward me, I smirked and said, "Adorable. I brought someone too." That's when the door flew open. I should have known from the beginning. Looking back, the signs were always there. Subtle but undeniable. The way my mother, Renee, spoke about money as if it were owed to her. The way my younger brother, Derek, always seemed to fall in line behind her, like a shadow that never questioned the shape it followed. The way they both looked at me not as family but as a resource. Still, some foolish part of me had wanted to believe they wouldn't go that far. That belief shattered the moment I walked into my aunt's house that Sunday evening. I had been invited under the guise of a family meeting, a final chance to settle things after my grandfather's passing. But the moment I stepped inside and saw the two lawyers sitting at the table, their briefcases already open, I realized what this really was. A setup. I had never been particularly close to my mother. She was a woman who had spent her life convincing herself that the world had wronged her, that she deserved more than what life had given her, that every misfortune, every missed opportunity, every financial struggle was someone else's fault. My father's before he died in a car accident when I was 10. The government's for never giving her the kind of assistance she felt entitled to. The bank's for rejecting her poorly planned business loans. And mine. Always mine. I had been the responsible one. The one who worked hard. Who got out. Who built something for myself. I moved from Charlotte to Atlanta when I was 22. Put myself through school, and built a stable career as an accountant. I paid my own bills, managed my own finances, and never once asked my family for help. That was my sin. In my mother's eyes, I had abandoned them. And when my grandfather, Walter, left me everything in his will, that sin became unforgivable. It wasn't as though I had asked for the inheritance. Walter had been a quiet man, a no-nonsense type who rarely gave praise, but showed his affection in other ways. He had pulled me aside one afternoon years before he passed, and told me plainly, "I know your mother. And I know your brother. When I'm gone, they'll ruin themselves trying to get what they think they're owed. I won't let that happen." I didn't argue with him. Didn't tell him he was wrong. Because I knew he wasn't. His estate wasn't vast, but it was substantial. A house, a sizable amount of savings, and a few investment properties he had accumulated over the years. Enough to change my life if I handled it well. My mother naturally was furious. This is a joke, she had spat when she found out. This has to be a mistake. It wasn't. And when she realized that no amount of arguing with the lawyers would change Walter's decision, she turned her anger on me. First she had tried guilt. "After everything I've done for you, you're really going to keep this from me?" She had demanded over the phone. "I raised you. I sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay me." Then manipulation. "You don't even need it, Kira." Derek had chimed in one evening. "You make good money. You don't have kids. What do you even want with all this? Mom could actually use it." Then, when none of that worked, threats. "You think you can just walk away from your family?" She had hissed in one of our last conversations. "You think you're better than us? You'll regret this." I should have walked away right then and there. Blocked her number. Moved on. But I didn't. Some part of me, the part that had spent years seeking her approval, craving the idea of a family that didn't exist, kept me from cutting them off completely. And that was my mistake. The family meeting was scheduled for Sunday evening at Aunt Patrice's house. That alone should have been a red flag. Patrice was the kind of woman who never did anything unless there was something in it for her. She wasn't close to me. Barely even acknowledged my existence unless there was money involved. But I went. I don't know what I had expected. Maybe some kind of final plea. A desperate last attempt at getting me to reconsider. But what I walked into was something else entirely. The house was too quiet when I arrived. I stepped inside, and there they were, Renee, Derek, Patrice, and two unfamiliar men in suits. My stomach sank. Something about the way they were sitting, the way their eyes met mine, told me everything I needed to know before a single word was spoken. I had walked into an ambush. One of the lawyers, a stiff-looking man in a navy suit, was the first to speak. "Kira," he said, a rehearsed smile on his face. "Please have a seat." I didn't move. My mother sat at the head of the table, hands folded, her expression too pleased. She had already decided she had one. The other lawyer slid a thick stack of papers across the table toward me. We've prepared a legal agreement for the transfer of your grandfather's estate to its rightful beneficiary, your mother. A wave of cold rage rolled through me. I looked at Derek. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Patrice. She was already looking away. I looked at my mother, and she was smiling. That was when I knew. This hadn't been a last attempt at a conversation. This wasn't a negotiation. This had never been about talking things out. This was a power play. They had expected me to be caught off guard, to feel pressured, to fold. I stared at the papers, not touching them. The room was too quiet. Finally, my mother sighed, sitting back in her chair with mock patience. Kira, she said smoothly, you don't have to make this difficult. Just sign. I lifted my gaze to hers, taking my time. The audacity of it. The sheer arrogance. She had spent years treating me like an outsider, like an obligation, like I was worth something only when I could give her something. And now she thought she could just take. As if I owed her that. As if I owed her anything. I exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment pressing in on me. Then finally I spoke. Funny, I murmured. I brought someone too. And that was the moment the door opened. The mood in the room shifted. The false confidence on my mother's face flickered for just a second before she schooled her expression into something unreadable. Derek stiffened, his jaw tightening. Patrice leaned back in her chair, arms crossing over her chest, as if she had already decided she wanted no part in whatever was about to happen. David Langston stepped inside, calm and composed, setting his briefcase on the table like he had all the time in the world. My lawyer. I hadn't said much when I called him a few days earlier, just that my family was trying something shady, and I needed someone who wouldn't be easily intimidated. He hadn't asked for details. He hadn't needed to. He had seen this kind of thing before. Apologies for being late, David said smoothly, though we both knew he wasn't. He looked at the stack of documents sitting in front of me, then at the lawyers seated across the table. I assume these gentlemen are aware that coercing someone into signing away an inheritance under duress is legally questionable? The man in the navy suit blinked, his expression briefly unreadable before he forced a polite smile. I'm not sure I follow. David didn't smile back. I think you do, he said. The silence in the room stretched. Renee shifted in her seat. Kira, there's no need to make this into a big deal. We just thought this would be the easiest way to handle things. I turned to her slowly. The easiest way? She gestured toward the papers. Her voice carefully measured. Walter wasn't in his right mind when he made that will. You know that. It doesn't make sense for him to have left everything to you. I'm his daughter. I had heard this argument before. The first time I had tried to reason with her. I had explained patiently that Walter was sharp until the day he died. That he had made his choice deliberately, knowing exactly what he was doing. That this wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting me. But she hadn't listened. She never listened. This isn't up for discussion, I said flatly. David reached into his briefcase, pulling out his own stack of papers. I have a signed affidavit from Walter's attorney, confirming that he was of sound mind when he drafted his will. I also have a copy of the estate's legal filings, which are already in probate court and fully compliant with state law. If you continue to pursue this, we'll have no choice but to file a formal complaint for undue influence and attempted coercion. The lawyer in navy stiffened. The other man, silent until now, leaned toward Renee, murmuring something in a low voice. She didn't react, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Derek finally spoke up, his voice quiet. Mom, maybe we should. Shut up, Renee snapped, not looking at him. And just like that, I felt it, the shift, the unraveling. My mother had come here certain she would win, that I would crumble under the pressure, that I would give in just to make this whole mess go away. But I hadn't. And now she didn't know what to do. I could see the calculations running through her head. If she backed down now, she would have to accept defeat. That Walter had chosen me over her. That there was nothing she could do to change it. But if she pushed forward, if she kept fighting, she risked losing everything, including me. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then finally, she exhaled sharply through her nose and turned toward the lawyers. Leave. The man in navy hesitated. Mrs. Caldwell, I really think. I said leave. The two men exchanged glances but didn't argue. They gathered their things, moving with quick, precise efficiency, and within moments they were gone. The door clicked shut behind them. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Renee turned back to me, her expression unreadable. "This isn't over," she said. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time, I realized how much of my life I had spent waiting for her to change. And how much of it I had wasted. I stood. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It is." And then I walked out. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove. The streets of Charlotte stretched out in front of me, familiar and yet distant, like I was seeing them through someone else's eyes. The neon glow of gas stations, the scattered pockets of traffic, the late-night diners with their flickering signs. It was all the same as it had always been, and yet nothing felt the same. I pulled into an empty parking lot and sat there for a long time, the engine idling beneath me. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt relieved, but all I felt was tired, because I knew the truth. This wasn't over. Not really. Renee wasn't the kind of person to let things go. She would try again. She always did. And sooner or later, I would have to decide just how far I was willing to go to stop her. I didn't hear from my mother for a while after that night. No angry phone calls. No late-night rants. No guilt-laden messages from Derek. Just silence. It was almost unsettling. I kept waiting for something. A lawsuit. A smear campaign. An unexpected knock at my door. But weeks passed and nothing happened. That should have been my first clue. Renee wasn't the type to back down. If she was quiet, it wasn't because she had accepted defeat. It was because she was planning something. And she was. The first real sign came in the form of a bank notification. I was in my condo in Atlanta, going over financial paperwork when I saw it. An alert from my grandfather's estate account. A withdrawal attempt. A large one. I felt my pulse spike as I logged in. My stomach twisted when I saw the details. It was Derek. He had tried to access Walter's trust fund, the one meant for property taxes and maintenance. He had tried to drain it dry. If I hadn't put safeguards in place, he might have succeeded. I called the bank immediately, my hands shaking as I spoke. The transfer had been flagged as suspicious and blocked. But the intent was clear. Derek had gone after the money. And that meant one thing: Renee had sent him. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen, a cold rage settling into my bones. This wasn't just desperation. This was theft. And I wasn't about to let it go. The next morning I called my lawyer. David didn't sound surprised when I explained what happened. "I had a feeling they weren't done," he admitted. "You want to press charges?" The question hung in the air. Legally, I could. What Derek had done was a crime. Attempted fraud. Attempted theft. If I wanted to, I could have the police on his doorstep by the afternoon. But I didn't want him in jail. I wanted something worse. "I want to take everything from them," I said, my voice calm, steady. "I want to make sure they never get another cent." David was quiet for a moment. Then he let out a slow breath. "All right," he said. "Let's make it happen." The first thing we did was lock everything down tighter than Fort Knox. David had already helped me set up security measures on the estate. But now we took it further. We froze access to anything that could be contested. We flagged my mother and Derek with every financial institution connected to the estate. So any attempt to access funds would be immediately denied and reported. We hired a forensic accountant to dig through every transaction related to Walter's assets, looking for any evidence of past theft or misconduct. And we found it. Years ago, Renee had siphoned money from Walter's personal accounts, taking out loans in his name and defaulting on them. She had gotten away with it because Walter never pressed charges. But now I had proof. And I planned to use it. I waited until everything was set. Until every piece was in place. Then I went to Charlotte. Not for a conversation. Not for another fake family meeting. I want to end this. I showed up at my mother's house unannounced. Derek answered the door, his face pale when he saw me. "Kira," he said, his voice wary. "What are you doing here?" I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. My mother was in the living room, her expression sour as she glanced up from the couch. "So you finally decided to come crawling back?" I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "Not quite." I pulled out a thick folder and dropped it onto the coffee table. It landed with a loud thud, making Derek flinch. What the hell is this? Renee demanded. I didn't answer. I just let them open it. The first page was a cease and desist letter, warning them that any further attempts to access Walter's estate would result in legal action. The next pages, proof of fraud, bank statements, loan applications, financial records, all signed by Renee. Her face twisted as she flipped through them, her hands gripping the edges of the papers so tightly her knuckles turned white. This is bullshit, she spat. You don't have anything. I smiled. Actually, I have more than enough to take this to the police, I said. But I'm giving you a choice. Renee narrowed her eyes. What choice? I leaned forward, my voice low, controlled. You walk away. You stop trying to steal from me. You accept that Walter didn't trust you with his money, and you move the hell on. I tilted my head slightly. Or I continued, I press charges. For fraud, identity theft, financial misconduct. And we both know how well that's going to end for you. Derek was silent. His hands were clasped together. His face pale, his leg bouncing anxiously. He knew. He knew I wasn't bluffing. But Renee? She wasn't the type to back down easily. Her lips curled into a bitter sneer. You do that to your own mother? I let out a quiet laugh. You stopped being my mother a long time ago. That got her. For the first time I saw it, the realization sinking in. That she had lost. That there was nothing left to manipulate. That I wasn't afraid of her anymore. She sat back, exhaling sharply through her nose, her eyes narrowing. Fine, she finally said. You want me to walk away? I will. I studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good choice. I picked up my bag and turned toward the door. Derek called after me, his voice small. Here, I didn't turn back. I walked out, leaving them behind. For good. It was over. The inheritance was mine. Untouchable. Renee and Derek were cut off permanently. Financially, legally, personally. I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Because the truth was they had made their choice. And I had made mine. Walter had given me a gift. Not just the money but freedom. And I wasn't about to waste it.